to meet Harriet, the home-loving leopard.
An Indian poet once said that if the tiger stalks the jungle like the lowering clouds of an approaching storm, then the leopard moves as silently as mist drifting on a dawn wind. Of all the great cats, the leopard represents the ultimate in grace. Prophet Jeremiah measured an improbable event by recording in the Old Testament that you might as well expect a leopard to change its spots. This is the story of one leopard that very nearly did that. The story is set in the jungles of India and Sri Lanka. Throughout the Indian subcontinent, the leopard still exists in fair numbers. It is a very adaptable creature, as much at home in the trees as on the ground. The demands of close on 1 million years of evolution have produced the almost perfect predator. Leopards usually hunt by night, though there are exceptions. In moonlight, the white belly fur breaks up the shadowed outline that might otherwise betray the attacker to its victim. In daylight, the pattern of spots and rosettes provides superb disruptive camouflage. The golden fur mirrors the dappled sunlight of the forest. Provided it stands still, a leopard as little as 10 yards away is all but invisible. Only 2 body areas lack this near-perfect camouflage: the underside of the tail and the backs of the ears. These white signals help the young to follow the parent when they move together through the nighttime jungle. An adult female weighs only 120 pounds, a male perhaps 30 pounds more. But they are immensely powerful. Leopards have been known to carry prey 1.5 times as heavy as themselves up into the branches of a tree. The beautiful spotted coat has been too often the leopard's death warrant. But except for man, a fully grown leopard has no enemies to fear. Just how successful the leopard is can be judged from the fact that there are 24 subspecies that range from the hot grasslands of Africa to the cool forests of Manchuria. Each race differs only slightly in body outline and coloring, though every individual leopard in the world has a set of spots as unique to itself as fingerprints are to a man. Because it is such a successful hunter and is so secretive in its ways, the leopard has managed to survive throughout much of the old world. It is a protected species, yet because of the premium put upon its fur by illegal hunters, the distribution of the leopard is gradually shrinking. Today, its range still extends across much of Africa and the East. 100 years ago, it existed across most of northern Africa as well, and at its southern tip. It was widespread in Manchuria and Mongolia. The leopard fights a losing battle against an ever-growing human population in Asia. One place where it does enjoy security is Dudhwa National Park in India, close to the Nepalese border. The story of the leopard that changed its spots is set at Dudhwa and at a farm nearby called Tiger Haven. Tiger Haven lies just outside the park and is separated from it by a river. It is the home of an extraordinary man called Billy Arjan Singh, and it's also the home of a very extraordinary leopard. Billy Arjan Singh is a conservationist who has been honored by the Worldwide Fund for Nature with the award of its gold medal. In the early 60s, he made his 260-acre farm called Tiger Haven into a sanctuary for wildlife. Tiger Haven perfectly complements the 83 square miles of Dudhwa National Park, excellently run by India's Forest Department. Dudhwa is a sanctuary for 5 species of deer, including the beautiful spotted cheetah. Grey langurs browse on the leaves of the forest canopy. They are perpetually on the alert to warn the other jungle inhabitants with their cries when a tiger or a leopard is about. One leopard is always about. Her name is Harriet. Harriet was presented to Arjan Singh as an orphan a few weeks old. Her mother had been killed for her coat and the cub found abandoned. The plan was for Billy to rear Harriet and then reintroduce her to the wild. He was an excellent choice of foster parent, and not simply because he was a well-known conservationist. He has an unmatched rapport with big cats. Billy had already successfully reared and released a male leopard into the wild, and he soon proved he could establish the same relationship with Harriet. She thrived on bottle feeding and human care. Now she is 3 years old. Billy's sympathy for and understanding of big cats is possibly unique. So-called tame leopards are notoriously unreliable, prone to sudden fits of savagery. With Billy, and even his assistant, Harriet has always been trustworthy and almost overwhelmingly affectionate. Later, Billy adopted a tiger called Tara, another female. As with Harriet, he planned one day to return the tigress to the wild. Meanwhile, they often took walks together, though Harriet usually preferred to show her seniority and independence by lagging behind. Someday, Harriet would have to go back into the wild. Billy was sure she'd choose her own moment. Meanwhile, it was pure joy for him to have such a cat about the house. slow-motion film reveals the power which makes a leopard so deadly when it attacks. It also shows by contrast the way she pulls her punches while sparring with the dog Ely, whose skull she could easily crush. The short, accelerating rush from ambush, the charging frontal view, the first and last that its victim sees. With Harriet, this was play hunting, with Billy as the make-believe prey. When playing with Billy, she always retracted her claws and never left a scratch on his body. The first sign that Harriet hadn't lost her wild instincts came in her 3rd year when she started to go off hunting on her own at night. Early one morning she found a cheetal fawn inside the park. As if to prove to Billy that she knew how to support herself, she brought the cheetal back to Tiger Haven. Just as a leopard in the wild might carry its prey up into a tree, so Harriet stored her kill well out of reach of Ely. One morning, the alarm calls of the grey langurs alerted Billy to the fact that Harriet was somewhere down by the river that forms the border with the national park. Billy had a feeling that Harriet wasn't just there for a drink. A stronger instinct was governing her behavior. Recently, he had heard the rasping sound of a leopard calling at night from across the river. It was almost certainly a wild male. Leopards are not really at home in the water, but Harriet obviously meant to cross the river somehow. Billy could easily have ferried her in the boat, as he had often done before. Now he wanted to see what she would do if left to solve the problem for herself. Harriet finally launched herself across the river. Billy followed Harriet for some distance. Leopards mark their territory by leaving scent on trees and bushes. Harriet showed considerable interest in what was plainly the scent of a male. She rubbed herself against the base of scent-marked trees as a sign that she too had passed. Harriet now spent more and more time away in the jungle. Billy was sure she'd soon mate with the wild male. Normally, wild leopards move around and hunt at night, so Billy could therefore no longer hope to share Harriet's life out in the forest. There is one place, however, where leopards conduct their lives in daylight, 1,600 miles away to the south in Sri Lanka. Wilpattu National Park in Sri Lanka. 480 square miles of jungle surrounding large and beautiful waterholes. There, because they're the #1 predator, the leopards are creatures of the day rather than hunters of the night. In Sri Lanka, the Indian cheetah is known as the spotted deer. It's the same species that is hunted by leopards throughout the Indian subcontinent. This male is sawing, giving the rasping call that tells rival males and possible mates that he's around. The spotted deer respond with a whistling alarm call. There is only one species of leopard, Panthera pardus, though colours, spotting and build differ slightly from country to country. Choice of prey depends on what is locally most available. Wild pigs are high on any leopard's list of prey. They're particularly fond of the young piglets. This leopard means business. The adult pigs recognize the menace in the stalking gait. Now another kind of approach for another purpose. The spotted deer with fawn is wary and stamps in alarm, but the stealthy approach isn't intended for her. The stalk ends with 2 young leopards at play. There are few other places in the world where such a scene could be witnessed in broad daylight. The play fight finally panics the spotted deer. Deer are these leopards' main quarry, including the larger and far heavier samba. A samba stag. The females don't have antlers. Leopards prey on quite small animals too, like the black-naped hare. Some leopards, usually young ones, even specialize in catching birds. Grey langurs, one of the most agile and wary of monkeys, detest leopards and are always on the lookout for them. Despite their agility in the trees and on the ground, they sometimes get caught. But these langurs are simply playing. Leopards are solitary animals. They seldom consort with their own kind except to play together as youngsters and as adults to mate. Though they're loners, they're continually advertising their presence to other leopards by scent marking. The magnificent spotted fur was prized for years by the fashion industry. It takes from 5 to 7 leopards to make one coat. The trade in leopard skins is now banned internationally, but illegal hunting still goes on for the black market. A female leopard has passed this way, spraying her scent mark high up on a tree. You might expect leopards to keep away from tracks frequented by man, but they often use them for preference. Tracks make for much easier travelling than the matted undergrowth of the jungle, and the sand aids silent movement. In the jungle, even the leopard can't avoid making a little noise by disturbing twigs and leaves. There's another scent mark. Follow the spoor of a leopard along one of these sandy tracks, and you discover that a travelling leopard leaves the path every 20 yards or so to blaze its own scent trail. A good deal of this scent marking is a territorial warning to others to keep off. It is also part of the ritual of courtship and mating. The main reason the leopard is so successful over a range that extends from near desert to rainforest, from sea level to high altitude, is that it has few specialized demands. All it requires is a plentiful supply of game and water. Here it has both. The leopard has two main methods of attack. Sometimes it waits poised in a tree. This tactic has two advantages. Prey animals seldom look upwards for danger, and the leopard's scent tends to get carried away on the breeze. It also has disadvantages. Success depends on the victim standing or passing conveniently underneath. Another problem in this area. In the treetops there are the vociferous and ever-present langurs which give the game away by sounding the alarm. Spotted deer are never slow to take the hint and to add their own high-pitched alarm call. Most of the time, leopards catch their prey by stealth and at ground level. This time the deer are too wary, and the leopard knows it. This leopard possibly hasn't eaten for 24 hours. Now that the deer have fled, even a hare would do. Eventually, at the side of the waterhole, he finds something which raises intense interest. Piglets. Routed but not broken. Wild pigs with their slashing tusks are formidable opponents, particularly when defending their families. The adult pigs gather up their young and lead them back to the waterside. Here is that attack and incredible routing of the leopard again, in slow motion. When the leopard leaps in the air to escape, his badly bent tail can just be made out. He also has a tusk slash on his front leg. He's probably lucky to escape so lightly after the combined onslaught of around 600 pounds of furious pig. Leopards spend most of their time doing absolutely nothing. This isn't to say that a leopard will only hunt when it's hungry. Even with a full stomach, an easy chance to kill is often taken. But most of the time, especially after feeding, leopards spend the time relaxing in the way that only cats seem to fully understand. They don't waste energy that they would simply have to replace by more hunting. Movement is always leisurely. In leopard country, spotted deer can very seldom afford to relax. This was the kind of world of the wild leopard which Billy Argent Singh's hand-reared leopardess Harriet had entered when she strayed into the jungle from her home at Tiger Haven. Harriet stayed away for some time. Then one day, just as unexpectedly as she had vanished, she was back. Harriet seemed to take up exactly where she had left off in her relationship with Tara and with Billy. She was just as affectionate, but as the weeks went by, Billy became certain that she was pregnant by a wild leopard she'd met in the jungle. As her 3-month pregnancy developed, he prepared for the birth by building her a treehouse close to Tiger Haven. Harriet took to the treehouse at once, and as the time of her confinement drew near, refused to leave it. From time to time, Billy visited the treehouse to see that all was well. Then one morning when he climbed the ladder, Harriet had 2 small newcomers. A leopard, heavy with young, is at a disadvantage when she has to hunt. This is probably why a short pregnancy of between 90 and 105 days has evolved. But a short pregnancy means that the cubs are born, just like domestic kittens, blind and nearly helpless. By leaving them unable to move but safely hidden in a den, the mother is free to go hunting and therefore to produce milk for her offspring. On their mother's milk, the cubs doubled their birth weight in 4 weeks and trebled it in 6. Their eyes opened on the 9th day. Right from the start, Harriet let Billy visit her and even left her cubs for a while to give him a reassuring lick. But the wild instincts were still stirring in Harriet, and she soon showed that she had her own plans for the 2 cubs. Three weeks after their birth, Harriet decided to move the cubs into the jungle. Perhaps the treehouse didn't feel safe enough. Billy saw her leave with the second of the cubs. He followed her at a discreet distance, using the alarm calls of the disturbed langurs as a guide. After a while, the cries of the monkeys ceased. This meant that they could no longer see Harriet, and he became worried that he'd lost her. Then she reappeared from the shadows. Harriet was making for a hollow at the base of a tree. There inside was the first cub. She made sure no other predators were watching before she deposited her second cub. Now she was back in the wild, Billy was concerned that even his presence might disturb her. She was obviously much more wary out here in the jungle. So he built a grass blind, or mashan, from which to observe her. Very little study had been done on leopards rearing young in a wild state, and this was a unique opportunity. Leopard cubs grow quickly. They're weaned in 3 months. After that, they share their mother's catches. At 4 months, they begin to follow their mother on her nightly excursions, learning the difficult art of hunting. At the age of 2, they're experienced enough to live a completely independent life. Possibly because this was her first litter, Harriet had only produced twins. Female leopards sometimes give birth to as many as 6 young. At 2 weeks old, the cubs were very active and had to be restrained from crawling out into the jungle. But now a factor far beyond Harriet's control was entering the family life. The monsoon was approaching fast. This year, the first storms broke early. From the safety of Tiger Haven, Billy became increasingly worried about the fate of the cubs. The den was in an old riverbed, and with the amount of rain that was falling, the lair would flood very soon. With luck, Harriet might carry the cubs to higher ground. If not, then they would surely drown. On the second day of the floods, Harriet appeared, out of the blue, at Tiger Haven. She was carrying one cub. She made straight for her favorite upstairs room, the kitchen. Perhaps she was trying to provide for her own young the kind of security that she herself had known at the farm. But there was still one cub to be accounted for. After dropping her first cub, Harriet seemed reluctant to leave. Billy was afraid this meant that the other cub had already drowned. He tried to calm and reassure her. Within the hour, the rain eased off a little. Harriet got up and walked quietly out of the house. No sooner had she set off across the bridge than the storm broke again with greater intensity. The river started to rise more rapidly than before. At this rate, the bridge leading to Tiger Haven would soon be cut off. In an hour, she was back with a second cub. Both cubs were none the worse for their soaking. While the monsoon raged outside, Harriet and her family proceeded to take over most of the kitchen's floor space. At the end of 2 days, the storm finally blew itself out. The fish were in fact the worst affected by the deluge. Silt brought down by the floods had clogged their gills, forcing them to gulp surface air to survive. For a week or so, the half-drowned forest got a brief respite. No sooner had the water level begun to drop than Harriet and one of the cubs were found to be missing from the farm. On a hunch, Billy hurried to the riverbank. They were waiting by the boat in which Harriet herself had often crossed during her excursions with him into the national park. Though she'd already swum the river on her own, She obviously wasn't going to risk it carrying a cub. Taking care not to panic her, Billy ferried mother and child across the swollen river. Harriet headed off into the jungle. She dropped the first cub in the tall grass and immediately returned to Tiger Haven for the second. There, a strange thing happened. Instead of going directly to the boat, Harriet made a complete tour of the upper story. She seemed reluctant to leave the safety of Tiger Haven. Finally, she set off for the river. Not until she reached the boat did her pace slacken. Then, with a last look round, she clambered aboard. Even though Billy Arjun Singh had planned all along to return Harriet to the wild, he was still sad to see her go. This time he somehow felt she was taking her cubs away for good. As a leopard raised in human surroundings, her life in the jungle would be full of hazards with which truly wild leopards are better equipped to deal. She might, for instance, be far too trusting with human beings. Whatever the laws protecting them, all leopards still carry a price tag on their coats for the unscrupulous hunter. With the worst of the monsoon still to come, the survival of her cubs was by no means certain. Whatever the outcome, there was nothing that Billy could do to influence events. Harriet's wild nature had proved stronger than any other tie. When she stepped off the boat this time, Billy Arjun Singh sensed that this was a final parting. For some days, Harriet kept her cubs within easy reach of the river, away from the depths of the jungle where tigers and sloth bears roamed. Billy saw the cubs again only once. They were learning to climb trees under Harriet's careful eye. A few days after these scenes were filmed, Harriet and the cubs vanished altogether. It seems, after all, that there is no way that a leopard can really change its spots, when the jungle, with all its mysteries, lies out there, beckoning.
Next week at 8, ER comes to 5, Animal ER. It's an hour-long documentary about one of the world's most advanced centres for the treatment of animals, the University of Pennsylvania's School of Veterinary Medicine, where the intensive care vets are on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Amongst other patients, there's a horse that needs orthopaedic surgery, a Labrador who's swallowed a battery, and a pup that's downed a near-fatal slug of vodka. That's real-life drama in the Animal ER, next Sunday evening at 8 here on 5. Call of the Wild returns in 2 weeks' time.